And so the impact of the events of 9/11 are still being felt today. Shortly after the attacks on 9/11, America responded with a war against terror that reached from Afghanistan to Iraq and beyond. And despite President Bush's premature celebration, 16 years later, and this war is still being waged. To put this in perspective, children who were born in 2001 are just 1 year away from being old enough to serve in what has evolved into a never-ending war being waged on a 16-year-old authorization for use of military force that has been passed down from President Bush to President Obama and now President Trump, without any additional authorization from 8 sessions of Congress that have convened since 9/11. And while the masterminds behind 9/11 have either been killed or captured, including the killing of Osama bin Laden under the direction of President Barack Obama, our relationship with Saudi Arabia, the nation from which 15 of the 19 terrorists came, has never wavered. We've never seriously addressed Saudi Arabia's role in the terrorist attack. 28 pages of the congressional investigation into the events of 9/11 were withheld for years because of how those documents implicated the Saudi royal family. A sampling of those pages shows you why. Quote, while in the United States, some of the September 11th hijackers were in contact with and received support and assistance from individuals who may have been connected to the Saudi government. At least 2 of those individuals were alleged by some to be Saudi intelligence officers. Another excerpt from the missing pages of the 9/11 Commission report stated, quote, one of the individuals identified in the pages as a financial supporter of 2 of the 9/11 hijackers later received a significant amount of cash from a member of the Saudi royal family during a 2002 trip to Houston. And new evidence is now emerging that Saudi Arabia allegedly funded a dry run of the 9/11 attacks. Quote, 2 years before the airliner attacks, the Saudi embassy paid for 2 Saudi nationals living undercover in the U.S. as students to fly from Phoenix to Washington in a dry run for the 9/11 attacks, alleges the amended complaint filed on behalf of the families of some 1,400 victims who died in the terrorist attack 16 years ago. One of the missing pages sums it up rather succinctly, saying, quote, a deleted document dated July 2nd, 2002 indicates incontrovertible evidence that there is support for these terrorists inside the Saudi government. So despite the clear role that Saudi Arabia's government played in the 9/11 attacks, we've done nothing but protect Saudi Arabia. The Bush administration protected Saudi Arabia by not allowing the full 9/11 Commission report to be released. President Obama protected the Saudis by vetoing a bill that would allow the kingdom to be sued by victims of 9/11. That veto was subsequently overridden by Congress. And President Trump, despite his oafish but accurate language towards Saudi Arabia during the election, has gotten completely in bed now with the kingdom. There was no military invasion of Saudi Arabia, no drone attacks, no sanctions, nothing despite their clear involvement. Yet we utterly devastated Iraq, a nation that had nothing to do with 9/11 nor had weapons of mass destruction. So today we honor the victims of 9/11. One thing we do well in America is to mourn our fallen with symbols of pride and patriotism. But we've yet to come to terms with our foreign policy decisions which helped create Osama bin Laden, using him to fight against the spread of communism. We have yet to come to terms with our foreign policy decisions which support the spread of Wahhabism, the virulent strand of Islam that is the theological underpinnings of Islamic fundamentalists. We've not confronted our perverse relationship with a nation that was at a minimum complicit with the greatest attack on American soil since Pearl Harbor. We have not even begun a conversation about how America has used and still uses an extremist ideology as a tool to fight back against communism, the economic rival to capitalism. America will protect capitalism even if it means promoting Wahhabism, even if it means the creation of the very organizations that we're still fighting 16 years later. In America, we know how to mourn our dead. But we haven't learned yet how to honor them by changing the decisions that ultimately led to 9/11 and that continue to create terrorism abroad.